It was Erev Rosh Hashanah, 2019, 6 years ago. And here in Ziegler Sanctuary on the Bima, I told the following story. I explained that on a recent trip to the beach, our children were complaining. They're complaining because they had only one boogie board to share among the three of them. Such problems in our lives. But overhearing our silly conversation was a homeless man. And he smiled at my bickering kids, and he looked at me and said, "Listen, I have an extra boogie board. Just take it." And before I knew it, he took the board's cord and wrapped it around my hand, and he smiled an even larger grin. And I said, "Can I pay for the board?" And he responded with the most beautiful words. He said, "Listen, lady, that's up to you. But now the blessings are in your hands to give." So I gave him something for the board, but then I started to stare at my hands. The blessings are in my hands. The blessings are in my hands to give. Now at that point, 6 years ago, I had asked the congregation to open their hands, reminding them that only we can determine the blessings we are meant to offer the world. But here's what I learned about that night. That night, 6 years ago, there was a young congregant who was here, and he heard that line, "Open your hands," and he started to laugh. Now, I didn't hear him laughing, but his family heard him. And he was laughing because he had been recently diagnosed with hand-foot-mouth disease. And when I said, "Open your hands," he thought to himself, "Really, Rabbi?" And I thought it was such an eloquent, thoughtful, meaningful introduction to the High Holy Days. But that's now an ongoing joke in their family. But let me share a little bit more about this beautiful family. Because that young man was Ryan Dubin. And he tragically died just weeks ago at the age of 23 years old. While Ryan was fighting cancer, his family never entertained the possibility of Ryan dying. Instead, they fought by his side and his will to live, and they basked in their boy's exuberance, his joy, his passion, his love. Now, starting the day after Yom Kippur's end, rabbis around the world begin to wonder, what am I going to speak about next year? And sometimes worldly events dictate the message, and certainly there are enough worldly events to dictate a message. Other times you speak about a personal journey. But this year it's Ryan's family. This year it's Sophia Gadushi's story, a woman who was also taken by cancer so soon. It is watching and experiencing the ways our community grapples with intense, unfair, heart-wrenching tragedies that informs what I want to share with all of you this morning. Because when I look around, I see so much heartache. I don't want to repeat what Rabbi Harold Kushner writes in his book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People. In the wake of his own son's death, he beautifully explores ways to remain connected to God even when angry, even when filled with utter pain. But instead, this Yom Kippur morning, when so many are spiritually wrestling with your own personal loss, when we are wrestling with grief, with the sheer darkness that the world provides, I want to explore with all of you a different question. The question of how. How do we navigate despair, the heaviness of the everyday, and emerge still with a sense of hope? Eicha. It's the same word that begins the cries, the lamentations that we chant on Tisha B'Av, the greatest day of mourning for the Jewish people. Eicha translates into how. Remember, Tisha B'Av is the day that commemorates the destruction of the temples in Jerusalem, the day in which it was decreed that the Jews should be expelled from Spain and England, the day that began World War I, and the day that the first trainload of Jews arrived to Treblinka. Now, the rituals of Tisha B'Av look very different from any other holiday, even Yom Kippur. On Tisha B'Av, we sit on the ground. All of us are mourners together. We don't wear tefillin. We don't wear prayer shawls. We don't sing the liturgy. The prayers are recited without melody, as if to intentionally deplete the sanctuary of any semblances of laughter, of joy, of light. And this year, on Tisha B'Av, when the cantor was reciting the Shema in the morning services, I automatically found myself reaching down to play with my tzitzit, to hold on to the fringes of my prayer shawl. But as I said, there was nothing to grasp. But our tradition is brilliant. For at the start of Tisha B'Av, we are meant to feel lost and confused, detached and lonely. But by the afternoon, we put our talitot back on. The tzitzit are back in place. They are nestled within our grasp. And suddenly the questions and lessons we are meant to face are strikingly clear. How do we face the uncharted struggles that each one of us will inevitably face? How do we survive the bleakness of the night when the daybreak feels so very far away? As Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl teaches, regardless of how small one's worst moment may seem in comparison to another's, it remains the most challenging experience in that person's life. Life inherently includes suffering, manifested in various ways, and sooner or later, each of us goes through periods of suffering beyond our control, whether linked to the loss of cherished things, illness, or the death of a beloved person. How do we, the living, find hope when our suffering feels magnified beyond compare? Well, who knew that Ryan Dubin, laughing at me in 2019, would hold my answer to my question of how? Because you remember why he laughed? It's because I said, open your hands. How do we get through life's greatest challenges? I think it's by doing exactly that. It's by opening our hands. Let me give you a few examples. Labor Day weekend 2024, Ryan Dubin was determined to get to his brother Josh's wedding. And even though his body was consumed with pain, there was no way this youngest of 4 siblings was going to miss something celebratory for the Dubin family. Because if you know the Dubins, you show up. I stood under the chuppah and I watched this baby brother march down the aisle with his older brother, towards his older brother and sister-in-law to be. And as he was processing forward, he didn't process alone, but he walked arm in arm. He walked hand in hand, hearts eternally woven with his brother Alex and sister Ellie. And in all honesty, I'm not sure who was lifting whom, because as one blur, they were laughing and crying, and they made their way as a unit to stand under the chuppah, under the talit with their parents, Mark and Cindy and Lauren and Josh, the exquisite bride and groom. Fast forward almost exactly 1 year later, Rabbi Wolpe, Rabbi Sherman, and I witnessed a very different procession. This time, the Dubin family accompanying Ryan's body as they laid him to rest. But you have never seen a procession like this. Once again, hand in hand, arms interlocked, there they were. A family lifting each other up, only able to take one step in front of the other because of a reliance on each other's strength and courage and faith and love. Hundreds upon hundreds, our community members stood behind them, all silent, except for Ryan's guitar music playing through speakers. But we all witnessed the very same thing. Yes, 5 human beings were holding each other, but very easily from the world beyond, we saw the 6th Dubin, Ryan's hands so clearly woven throughout theirs. How do we walk through heartache? We choose to open our hands and lift each other. Forget politics. Forget differences. Forget old grudges and arguments in our most dire of moments. We simply must be willing to take a loved one's hand and assure them that in our shared pain, we choose above anything else to hold each other. And Ryan teaches from Olam Haba, from the world to come, the souls of our loved ones are continuing to give us strength. They're continuing to fuel our souls. Sophia Gadushi, 25 years old, an alum of Sinai Akiba Academy and Milken Community Day School. This summer, her family called me to share the news of her untimely passing, and in doing so, they shared a remarkable story. Penny, Sophia's mom, asked the Jewish chaplain if she had a kippah nearby because they wanted to pray the prayers of Shabbat. Now, the chaplain started to laugh and said, "Listen, you're in a Catholic hospital. I'm not sure we have any kippot nearby." But the chaplain went down to her car and she brought up the one kippah she had in her glove compartment. And this kippah that she brought up, it happened to be bright pink, which was the same color as Sophia's bat mitzvah colors. But then Penny turned the kippah over to read the name of whose kippah it was. I can't make this up. Believe it or not, that one kippah that she had, the one in her car, the girl's name on the kippah, the girl that they clearly didn't know, was also Sophia. Now, something compelled Penny, Sophia's mother, to place the kippah in her Sophia's open hand, and within seconds, Sophia passed away. Now, 30 minutes earlier, I was sitting with Sophia and Penny and her grandmother, and we sang the words together. Beyado afki ruchi, be'etishan ve'aira, ve'im ruchi geviati Adonai li velo ira. Into God's hands I entrust my spirit. When I sleep and when I wake, with my spirit and my body also, God is with me. I will not fear. And so I think when Penny decided to place that kippah in Sophia's hand, Sophia knew that God was holding her spirit close, embracing her and comforting her family, that God is with her and she should not be afraid. Through tremendous loss, how do we cope? How do we face the broken fractures of our heart? Sophia teaches us. We open our hand knowing that if we do, God won't let us go. That simultaneously God holds the souls of those we love and gently nudges us forward, encouraging us not to be afraid of what life's journey, life's blessings, life's surprises are still meant to bring. If we are willing to be held, God's hands have room for us all. One last story. This past Shavuot, Sandy Levy stood proudly in Cone Chapel as one of our adult B'nai Mitzvah students. And Sandy shared about her father, Shimon. Her father was born in Sarny, a Jewish town on the border of Ukraine and Belarus. And before the war, you can imagine it was full of life. But by its end, almost no one was left. Shimon's parents, most of his brothers and sisters, his wife Sippi, and their two little boys, Sandy's brothers, Yidal and Yossel, were all murdered by the Nazis. Her father was taken, sent to camps in Poland, later to Mauthausen, where he worked until the war had finished. And when Shimon was freed, he searched everywhere for survivors. He couldn't find one until miraculously he discovered one brother in Israel and one sister in New York, who eventually brought him here. But now Shimon only carried two possessions with him, two tangible items out of the camps, two tangible items on his grueling trek from Eastern Europe to Israel to the United States. one of them being a torn photo of his wife and his children, and the other being a weathered machzor, a high holy day prayer book. These were his treasures. Now, as a child in Boston, Sandy remembered walking to shul, walking to synagogue, holding her father's open hand. Standing next to him while he prayed, she saw a man who had lost almost everything. But as he held his machzor, his prayer book, she knew he never lost his faith, and because of that, he never lost his hope. What you don't know is that as Sandy delivered her Devar Torah that morning as an adult bat mitzvah in Cone Chapel, she held her father's machzor. And this year, Sandy's home burned down to the ground in the Palisades fire, but miraculously, somehow, safely placed elsewhere, that machzor survived. How do we walk through horror and suffering? We choose to keep our hands open to our faith, to our tradition that has held us together, that has kept our people standing for thousands of years. And we grasp onto life knowing that this is the same fuel that has provided comfort and courage, light and hope. Psalm 23 is recited at funerals, often in Shiva homes, at every Yizkor service. The beginning of the psalm, we know, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures. God leads me beside the still waters." I think Psalm 23 is our liturgical answer to how. How will I walk through the valley of the shadow of death? As I was looking at the psalm, one answer jumped out at me in a way it has never before. The end of the psalm reads as follows: "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever." In the Hebrew, tov v'chesed, those that are immersed in pain have trouble imagining a future life filled with goodness and mercy. But I'm not sure that's exactly what the psalmist is conveying. Rather, I think the psalmist is asking us to open our hands to the possibility that goodness and mercy are looking for us. They are following us, pursuing us, trying to lift us up, reminding us that even when we feel most alone, our worn out, broken, shattered hearts are yearning to be held, whether through the form of a loved one's embrace, perhaps through the comfort of God's care, or maybe through the anchoring of our timeless tradition. Goodness and mercy are the metaphors for the ways that we will be guided through life's most challenging moments. Goodness and mercy will find a way to unclench our understandably exhausted, grief-stricken, tightened fists. On this Yom Kippur, we are courageously asked to open our hands. We reveal our shattered hearts, and in doing so, we reach out for blessing, lifting up our loved ones' names, their stories, their love, to receive their hope and their embrace, feeling their palm within ours, so much closer than our minds can possibly fathom. The valley of the shadow of death is not where we remain, but rather goodness and mercy shall follow us all the days of our lives. And with hands held open, we shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Gemar Chatima Tova. May we all be inscribed in the book of life. Amen.